Good afternoon and welcome to the Ellen MacArthur Foundation Summit 2020. We had an eventful day here yesterday, the joys of remote working. But if you needed proof, you got it. We are live. We have a really ambitious setup here with guests on tight schedules queued up around the world. And when you have gremlins in the studio, things can go wrong. But thank you to all of you and to all of our speakers for bearing with us. And fingers crossed, today we will be able to put things right. A quick comment about some of the content that we missed yesterday. Ilham Kadri, the CEO of Solvay, gave us a one-to-one interview immediately after the show. We also were able to speak with Kobe Brand this morning about circular economy in Africa. And we just wrapped a conversation with Nigel Topping on circular economy and the climate agenda for the COP26 in Glasgow. These interviews sit on the featured video section of the Summit website, along with a host of other content, including interviews with Mariana Mazzucato, Alan Kay, David Navarro, and a load more. Right, onwards and upwards. We are praying to the technology gods here in London, and at the very least, you get to see me sweat under the unreasonably hot studio lights for another 50 minutes today as we rattle through 4 key topics: plastics, finance, fashion, and food. First up, plastics, the wonder material that we have lost control of. The fight against plastics pollution is one example of how companies and governments are using the circular economy to create solutions at scale. Juliet Lennon works in our New Plastics Economy initiative. Juliet, hello.
Hi.
Plastics is in some way the poster child of the linear economy, but we're starting to see a bit of a shift in the industry, right?
Thanks, Joe. Yes, absolutely. We have seen massive growth in commitment and action to address plastic waste and pollution. In fact, through the New Plastics Economy Global Commitment and the network of plastics pacts around the world, we now have over 1,000 organizations committed to building a circular economy for plastic. But commitment alone is not enough. It is crucial to see this turn into action and results at speed and scale. And we work with organizations, both large and small, on this challenge. And today we'll hear from 2 of the biggest, Nestlé and Walmart. Both these companies are large users of plastic packaging that is currently often not reused or recycled, but that is exactly why we believe they are uniquely positioned to be part of the solution and make an impact at the scale that's needed. So, to talk to us about their journeys, I'd like to welcome Kathleen McLaughlin, CSO of Walmart, and Mark Schneider, CEO of Nestlé. Hello to you both, and thank you for speaking to us today.
Hello. It's great to be here.
Fantastic. So, Mark, I'd love to come to you first. Making commitments and setting targets is a really important step, but it's not an end point in itself. So, how much progress has Nestlé made, and how far do you still have to go on this journey?
Yeah, thanks, Juliet, and pleasure to be on this panel. So, as you know, we have a commitment out to make all of our packaging reusable or recyclable by the year 2025. We made that commitment about 2 years ago, and since then, a lot of work has been underway. It's a steep challenge, and just to give you a sense of the size of the challenge, we're using about 366 billion pieces of packaging per year of all materials. Out of that total, about 280 billion pieces are plastic packaging. Judging by weight, just to give you a sense of where we are, about 83% of our packaging is reusable or recyclable now. This is all based on 2019 full year numbers. And about 66% of the plastics packaging is reusable or recyclable at this point in time, based on 2019 numbers. So we're already quite a part of the way along, but of course there's more work to do, and time is of the essence. I think COVID now has underpinned something that we stressed a long time ago, and that is the importance of food safety for the quality of our products and the safety of our consumers. But obviously, this is no excuse. We got to solve this problem. We got to solve the leakage of plastics into the environment, and hence we're working on this as a top priority. There are 3 pillars. One is new and better and more recyclable materials. We started an Institute of Packaging Sciences that's looking into that and making good progress. More than 50 scientists working on evaluating new options that are coming up every day, and also trying to discover new materials that we can then scale up with our suppliers. The second thing is we're investing in recycling infrastructure. Obviously, we can't do that on a global scale, but we want to do it on a very selective basis in certain geographies, or we want to do it with a focus on paying a premium for certain materials so that we get the recycling mechanism going. Our special need is, of course, food-grade recycled material, and there's been a shortness of that, and hence that's why we wanted to get engaged in the recycling activities as well, hence the investing focus. And the third one is we're working with consumers, with our retail partners on new behaviors, new options. The responsible use of packaging is very important. We rely on everyone's help in that regard. And also alternative delivery models and a different way of shopping for food and beverage products, I think will be a key initiative in the future. And so we're quite engaged in that. So with those three work streams, we believe we're on a good journey towards 2025 and meeting our commitments.
Fantastic. Kathleen, I'd love to bring you in here. As a retailer, you're in a slightly different position to Nestle. So where's Walmart on this journey, and what could we expect it to feel like in a Walmart store in, say, 2 or 3 years' time?
Well, thanks, Juliet. It's a real pleasure to be here. We're really excited to be part of the new plastics economy efforts, and we share the vision that we want a world where there is no plastic waste. So we do have a unique role as a retailer because we sit at that intersection of many, many categories, many, many suppliers, and then the customer. And so we think we can play a special role in accelerating adoption of innovations in packaging across the supplier base, and educating the customer, and then bringing other assets to bear, such as Walmart.org, philanthropy, and so on, to contribute to things like infrastructure solutions or materials innovation for substitution. So we very much agree with the Breaking the Plastics Wave conclusions about we can't recycle our way out of this problem. And we've been working quite closely with Systemic in the last number of months to take our packaging footprint across all categories and consider, based on specific use cases, where do we have an opportunity working with suppliers to accelerate outright reduction in packaging where packaging is frankly not necessary, or substitution of different materials, reuse and refill models and the innovation that needs to come along with that, often at the entire category level. You know, for reuse and refill models, sometimes an individual supplier like a Nestle can't move alone. The whole category really needs to evolve. And then also for recyclability, you know, how can we have better materials? And as you know, we've got commitments as part of the Plastics Pact around 100% recyclability, reusability, industrial compostable materials in our private brand by 2025. So working with suppliers, we've started with 5 specific use cases. So beverages, produce, meat and seafood, consumables, and then also tabletop, right? So plastic plates and cups and those kinds of things.
Yeah.
And based on our footprint, we're working with suppliers to identify very specific changes that could be adopted quickly around reduction, substitution, improvement of materials, and so on. So, you know, we're pretty excited about that work. We're exploring the possibility of doing more granular reduction targets connected, you know, to those categories in that work. And then meanwhile, despite COVID, we are proceeding with a number of pilots in different markets for more innovative reuse and refill approaches. So in Mexico, for example, we're piloting with Unilever a refillable, we're calling it the refillery approach around their products. So it'll be a refill station for shampoo and conditioner in a number of stores. So we're hoping to learn, you know, does that work, and how could we perhaps scale that, you know, across that market in other categories or other markets. And then with Asda, we had been hoping and planning in the spring to launch a whole reuse refill aisle. plastic-free aisle, and we had to delay that a bit, but we're on tap to do that this fall in October, and it's going to be an opportunity for customers to bring containers that they can refill with Asda own brand coffee and rice and pasta, things like that. So we're testing, we're learning. We agree we need to go fast. We're doing the best we can across that.
Yeah.
And then, in the US, we're engaged in a number of initiatives as well. There's a piece around our plastic bag and trying to move away from that as a solution.
I just want to jump in here because it's fantastic to hear how you're working with others, because actually, we know that this is a massive challenge we're trying to address. No one organization can do this alone. And it's also fantastic to hear about these upstream efforts, thinking about elimination and reuse, because we know to date there's been a lot of focus on recycling as the solution, but actually these upstream efforts have an equally important role to play, but it's often not as big as a part of the conversation. We're actually rattling through our time here, and you've mentioned some great examples there, and I'd just love to end back with Mark and just wondering, what's Nestle doing in terms of elimination and reuse, and what kind of conversations are you having? What can we expect to see in future on this?
I think what you're seeing as a common denominator here between Kathleen's points and mine is there's not one silver bullet here. You got to hit it from all different angles. And I fully agree that good cooperation between retailers and manufacturers is really important. We're also relying on a few other constituents, but if retailers and manufacturers are not seeing eye to eye, that's a problem. And we very much cherish the cooperation we have with Walmart around the world. Downsizing the packaging and, really just making sure you're using only the size packaging you need is one major initiative. I think that one has been kind of underexplored in the past, and that's also something we're exploring with Vengeance now. Alternative delivery systems, refill models. Clearly, COVID has shown that you have a very high bar here when it comes to food safety, but it can be done, and there's some exciting solutions out there. I think on those, we're still piloting a few things with a view to understanding them better before we scale them up. But I think around the world, there's a bunch of exciting solutions in that space, and we're committed to them.
Well, fantastic. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Kathleen, for sharing those insights. That's all we've got time for today, but it's great to hear where Nestle and Walmart are today. And I think if there's two things that you should take away from this session and that we've heard, it's that firstly, we are on a journey. There is no one simple solution or quick fix. We're seeing players already starting to take significant action, and yet we need to see that continue at speed and scale and be increasingly bold and ambitious. And the second thing is we need both upstream and downstream solutions. Recycling alone will not solve this problem, and we need more investment in every sense in elimination and reuse. That's all from us. Back to you, Joe.
Thank you very much, Juliet. And yes, what a start. If you want to go deeper into the plastics wormhole, there are 3 films in the featured video section for you to dive into. First of all, we have an in-depth interview with Mark Schneider, who you just heard from. Secondly, we have a conversation summarising the recently published report, Breaking the Plastics Wave. Kathleen referred to this in her answer. And finally, we have a sneak peek at the Upstream Innovation book that will be published later this year with examples and tools to help you actually do this thing called upstream innovation. Now, finance. You might be thinking the circular economy is about materials. Why is finance relevant? What has money got to do with it? Well, finance has a crucial role to play, and any change in the real economy is just tied at the hip to a change in the finance sector. And it's, in a way, a bit of a chicken and egg game. So finance is crucial to transforming how we use products or access services, and ultimately for redirecting material flow through our economy. Emily Healy, who works on the Foundation's Finance Initiative, will take us through this one.
I think it's clear that finance can help to scale the kind of upstream and downstream solutions which Juliet was just talking about. But not only that. The circular economy also makes business sense, it makes financial sense, and obviously leading investors and bankers are taking this very seriously. We believe we're at a really exciting point in time. We're seeing the circular economy financing market taking off rapidly. Today, we're delighted to be launching a paper which brings this new analysis on this growth and gives the first ever comprehensive overview of circular economy activity across the financial sector. I'm joined by Michiel, who is our Finance Initiative lead, who's going to shed some more light on what this paper on financing the circular economy is actually about. So Michiel, please can you give us some of the highlights?
Thank you, Emily. I'm pleased to share a few key findings of the paper with you today. First, the paper shows how the circular economy offers a major opportunity to the financial services sector to deliver on environmental, social, and governance goals, including on climate change, while going beyond as a source of new and better growth. Second, the paper demonstrates very significant growth in circular economy financing over the past 18 to 24 months, really. For example, over the period, 10 public equity funds focusing on the circular economy have been launched by leading financial institutions, including BlackRock, Credit Suisse, and Goldman Sachs. And we see a similar trend of steep growth across asset classes, including bonds, venture capital, private equity, and banking activity, with, for example, Intesa Sanpaolo having launched a €5 billion credit facility to support circular companies. And finally, the paper calls on the financial services sector to build on this initial momentum and scale the circular economy, which will require both public and private sector action. Today, we're delighted to be launching this paper with the endorsement of over 30 leading financial services firms, including BlackRock, Intesa Sanpaolo, Barclays, Citi, Credit Suisse, HSBC, JP Morgan, Morgan Stanley, UBS, and many more, all demonstrating this massive interest from the sector. For more insights and numbers, I'd refer you to the paper, which is now available on our website. Over to you, Emily.
Thank you, Michiel, for sharing that with us. So there's a couple of important themes emerging here which I want to explore a bit further. So firstly, we have this important link between the climate agenda and the circular economy. And second, this rapid growth in financing activity. So I want to recap. The key takeaways from this session are the circular economy financing market is taking off, and the world's largest financial players are taking action on these investment and growth opportunities. But I want to echo what Larry said. This is just the beginning. While this recent growth in financing is promising, far more capital and far more activity will be needed. Now we need all aspects of finance. We need investors, we need banks, we need corporate finance departments, as well as governments and central banks to bring the circular economy to scale and fully seize its opportunity. That's it from me. Joe, back to you.
Thank you very much, Emily. And yes, so that report has literally just been published today. It's hot off the press. And as Emily said, you can find it on the Foundation's website. So the way next up is food, and the way that we produce and consume causes big problems. You know, our food system contributes to climate change, degrades land, and destroys habitats. But there is also big potential to change. Emma Chow, who leads our food initiative, will explain how taking a circular economy approach can help build a food system that is fit for the future.
Thanks, Joe. So, circular economy and food. Perhaps this is the first time that you've heard these words side by side. You may even be wondering, hold on, I thought the circular economy is just for stuff like computers, clothing, cars, but food? Well, this session is going to change your mind. If you take one thing out of this, it's that the circular economy is not just relevant to food, but it actually has the power to transform our food system. And to spark this transformation, we're working with pioneering cities and businesses from all around the world. And today, we'll get to hear from a few of them. First up, Dr. Agnes Kalibata, Special Envoy to the UN for the 2021 Food Systems Summit. I spoke with Dr. Kalibata earlier and asked her to tell us how her work with the UN will stimulate real food system action, and just how crucial food is in successfully meeting the Sustainable Development Goals. Here's what she had to say.
Last year, the UN Secretary General launched the Food Systems Summit, recognizing fully well that we are off track to achieving the SDGs, and recognizing that to deal with the problems we have in our food system needs a systems perspective. To stimulate action, we will take dialogues at every level of society. We'll have dialogues at country level, we'll have dialogues within action tracks, we'll have dialogues with the scientific community that is telling us, showing us the evidence of where we need to go. But more importantly, we are looking to raise ambition. We are looking to have tangible commitments and actions that will guide how we go forward. We will end the summit with a clear call to action with regards to what we need to do in the next 10 years. And we'll have mechanisms of tracking how we make progress around those actions.
Many thanks to Dr. Kalibata for joining us and for emphasizing how we need to take a full system perspective in order to meet the scale and complexity of food system challenges. But it's not just up to institutions like the UN to deliver solutions. Businesses and government are absolutely key. Now I am delighted to be joined by Emmanuel Faber, CEO of Danone. Thank you so much, Emmanuel, for joining us right now. Can you hear us okay? I just want to check.
Yeah, I can. Thank you.
Excellent. Fantastic. I can see you now in studio. There we go. We're connected.
Great.
Thank you so much. And I'm especially happy to have you joining us today because I know we have lots of folks tuning in from food companies, big and small, all over the world, many of whom have made the link between plastic packaging and circular economy. Can you tell us how Danone is applying circular economy principles beyond just your packaging and plastics to the core product they contain, to the food itself?
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. It's so relevant. I think plastic is, in a way, and that's very much because of the MacArthur Foundation, I think over the last few years, has become the symbol or the symptom of how circular the food economy needs to become. But indeed, it applies in a much deeper way to the whole food system. If you think about it and take a bit of a step back, it's very clear that in nature, way before we all started our current food system, the food system was circular. It had to be circular. There were seasons. There is a whole food chain, which actually is not a chain. We call it a chain, but it's not. It's a cycle through the soil in many ways. So we restarted thinking this in 2015 by organizing our main supplies and procurement and processes in cycles: the water cycle, the milk cycle, the CO2 cycle, the plastic cycle. So it started this idea that we need to quit the thinking that for the last 100 years maybe, or 50 years certainly, food is linear. You take resources, you optimize the way, you in a very efficient manner, you drive the immediate cost down, you deliver it, and then you dispose of it. That's totally a non-sustainable system, and that is basically the system on which large companies like ours and many others are actually being built and have been successful. It's very clear that this model is going to be a dead end. So we need to embark into the fundamental view that we need to regenerate the resources that we are using. We cannot deplete the system at a pace that is higher than the pace at which it's naturally able to replete itself. Probably the most critical aspect is the nitrogen cycle. The cycle of nitrogen in the soil is absolutely critical for the resilience of the food system. It goes together with the CO2 system, the CO2 cycle. Without CO2, I do not consider CO2 as an externality for Danone. I consider it as a fundamental part of the resilience of our system, because if we let agriculture get CO2 out of the soil, we won't have agriculture anymore, because carbon is 2/3 of the nutrients that are here in the soil, the natural nutrients for the microorganisms and for the plants. So we need to sink back the carbon into the soil. Hence the fact that at Danone, for the first time this year, for instance, we have published a post-carbon EPS number, earning per share number, because we really want everyone to think, including our shareholders, to think about exactly what you just said, which is how circular our whole systems needs to become.
Thank you so much. And you really drew on how we can apply the 3 principles of circular economy, especially regenerate natural systems, to food, probably more than any other sector that's out there because it's part of nature. But how does a company like Danone take steps in that direction and also meet shareholder demands and generate profits?
Wow. Yeah, that's obviously the in one way the complex part. But we have to be very clear that it is not opposite to. It has to be both. And the only question, but it's an important question, is the horizon of time at which we are investing. Because when we invest in carbon, when we invest in plastic circularity, what we have decided to do, so in France, for instance, by 2025, all our ingredients will be sourced 100% from regenerative agriculture. We're using France as a pilot board for this. In the US, we have radically changed 75,000 of acres out of GMOs of forage for the milk of the farms, for the cows of the farms that supply our milk, turning to regenerative agricultural practices, sinking carbon back in the soil, generating more biodiversity in the seeds that are being used, and monitoring this in a matter of 2 years. So we do it, but it's an investment. It starts by an investment, and then it returns. The yield of forage in the 50,000 acres in the US that we started has started by going down. The yield of milk by the cows went down because we changed their nutritional combination. But after only 2 years, it started to go up again. So we know that this is an investment. So the question is the horizon that we discuss with our shareholders. How much can we, on the path of profitable growth for Danone, can we afford to invest for the long term, invest for the midterm, or deliver for the short term in terms of EPS growth? So that's one dimension. Another one is, if you look at the ecosystem of the company, you could say my business is just to focus on my profit, and I don't care about farmers. I pay the lowest price I can. But we know, especially because as basically a milk company, even if today we are also the global leader in plant-based alternative proteins in the US and in Europe in particular, we know that because we collect milk every couple of days to these farms, that without the farmers making a living and their own system being resilient, they will not be farming tomorrow. The prices are going up all the place. I mean, farming is essential. Today in France, again, because of climate change, we will need to change the seeds of wheat, the seeds of maize, if we still want to be able to raise those crops. So there is an urgent need, not a long-term need. And that's the whole discussion that we're having with our shareholders and the basis of why they accepted this idea that we needed to accelerate on our climate investment plans.
So it's about having that long-term view, understanding those values and embedding it with the shareholders. I wish we could go on longer. Thank you so much. But unfortunately, that's all the time we have. Thank you, Emmanuel.
That's okay. Thank you very much for your leadership.
Thank you. So, like businesses, governments and cities also have a big role to play. I'm now joined by Vice Mayor Anna Scavuzzo from the city of Milan. Vice Mayor Scavuzzo, welcome, and thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much to you.
Welcome. I want you to share, as Milan is continuing to deal with the impacts of the global pandemic. Oh, I'll just check. Are you still with us? Can you hear us okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, perfect.
I can listen to you.
Hopefully they can see you online. I'm unable to see you in studio, but that's okay, as long as we can get the audio. So just wanting to know if you can share how Milan is applying circular economy in the design and reshaping Milan's food system that's going to work both now in short term and also in the longer term.
Thank you very much, Emma. Thank you also, because for us it's very important also to point the attention and focus our attention on this topic. Also because in this period of COVID and in this post-COVID recovery, we have to define new goals. And I think that circular economy allows us to align our priorities to promote sustainable, resilient, and inclusive policy. I think that production, environment, the relationship between quality and health, distribution, delivery, waste management must be key point in our activity. Since 2015, we have been working on our Milan food policy. That's a sort of new way of policy making based on circularity and cooperation. COVID hasn't stopped us and hasn't changed our approach. We don't forget our experiences and also our priorities, but now we have to redesign our action and our solutions. And I want to underline 3 points, first of all. We are working on new short supply chains from the peri-urban agriculture to the city, also because smart logistics is now even more important than in the past. Second point, local food waste hubs. And it's very important also because neighborhood networks against food waste, for instance, imply and require relations and cooperation. And it's very important in this period to promote relationship between people, with organization and association, and cooperation between them. And last but not least, healthy diets for school canteens and food aid, because fresh food still remains our priority also in this special period. I think that municipality can be driver of change also in food system transformation. We share our goals with all the stakeholders and the shareholders of the city. And now we are defining next goals on circular economy, because circular economy will be the cross-cutting approach for the next strategy, for the 10 years food strategy of our future. And as you know, Milan has been the first big city in Europe hit by COVID. And during the lockdown, the municipal departments have been working side by side together with all the public and private stakeholders. This circular cooperation, this collaboration, this sharing of gold and also of a strategy allowed Milan to overcome this lockdown. And our approach has been circular, cooperative, and also in progress day by day. I think that's thanks to our experience in food system management with the circular approach, we are shaping new solutions to new challenges. Just one idea, for instance, school canteens, food for children, with a circular approach also in this COVID period. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing how Milan is putting food or circular economy front and center in how it's reshaping its food system. Now, from cities all around the world to major food brands responsible for so much of the food that we eat every day, we've gained a glimpse at how circular economy is applied to food. This is not about small changes. It's about truly transforming our food system. And by redesigning it based on circular economy principles, we can harness the positive power of food to allow people, businesses, and the environment to thrive, both now and long term. Joe, back over to you.
Thank you very much, Emma. And it's just great to hear people talking with such passion and enthusiasm there on the food system. Okay, so next we move into fashion. Fashion, an industry that was acutely affected by the COVID-19 crisis. And as a result, the question really is no longer if we should change, but how. And recently we have seen commitments be announced by leading brands and manufacturers that are ambitious, public and time-bound. Laura Baumann, who works in our Make Fashion Circular initiative, will explain why circular economy offers a way out of the woods for the industry.
Thank you, Joe. The circular economy offers a solution to build a resilient fashion industry for the long term. A number of organisations in the fashion industry are well underway with circular economy pilot projects and are increasingly embedding its principles into their day-to-day decisions. Whilst they themselves would admit, we don't have all the answers and there's still a long way to go. Setting ambitious goals and taking bold actions towards them really offers a gateway to scale circular solutions. To find out more about the kind of actions fashion brands are taking, I spoke with Daniel Erver, Managing Director of H&M. In 2017, H&M set a very ambitious target to be circular by 2030. Can you tell us a little bit more about how that's being impacted by the current landscape?
Sure, I'm happy to. I think circularity was then, and I think still is, definitely the key for us and the entire fashion industry. For us, shifting to a circular business model plays a key role in our ambition to be climate positive by 2040 in our entire value chain. We want to reach customers all over the world and make it easy for them to make sustainable choices and buy products that they can truly love for a long time. And this is a journey that we have started, and that journey feels even more important now than it did when we set out in 2017. But we need to speed up and accelerate this work towards actually finding new sustainable business models.
And you've mentioned it's a journey. Can you tell us more about what progress you've made so far?
Glad to. We've been working with sustainability of our business for more than 20 years, so it's already been a long journey. But we now have to challenge ourselves, I think, question old assumptions and then reimagine what truth growth really is. We have a long journey ahead, and I think we are both excited but also challenged by the future that holds. But we really want to take the lead towards a sustainable fashion future. I think I would like to share a few examples of what we have done more specifically. And I think one important thing is incorporating circularity in our design process, both for non-commercial goods and for commercial goods, and working out standardized principles for securing circularity throughout the design process. Secondly, we are exploring models for product reuse that are commercially viable, and that includes both rental and re-commerce. We have a few examples of garment collect that we do in all stores across the world. We have a take care concept that's about helping the customer to extend the life of their products. And also some pilots on rental and re-commerce that we feel will be truly important for the future. And then thirdly, which has been a big part of our work historically, is about the material. And we have set an ambition that by 2030, we want 100% of the material to be sourced from more sustainable sources. And so far, we've come 57% of the way there. Then there are a few other examples connected to that. We are part of the H&M group, and that gives us a great opportunity to take part of the things that are going on within the group. And one example is we have an investment arm of the H&M group called the Laboratory that they are investing into companies. And one example is a company called RenewCell, who has a unique technology to recycle textile fibers of high content of cellulose into a new material called Circulose that we can use into actually making garments of virgin quality, which we are really excited about.
It's not just H&M making bold commitments. Last week, Timberland announced that it aims to be net positive by 2030 and that it will design 100% of its products to be circular and made from regenerative materials. I'm very pleased now to be joined by Christopher Rayburn, who is the creative director at Timberland. Thank you very much, Chris, for joining us from just the other side of London.
Yes, indeed, Laura. Real pleasure. And just to say thank you so much on behalf of Timberland. It's a real honour to be here and, of course, talking about circularity and what we're doing, really, to put this at the heart of our design and manufacturing process. So thank you.
Well, thanks for joining us. And net positive, 100% circular design, regenerative materials. What is this really going to mean in practice?
Yeah, I think, it's really important for us that we wanted to state these bold goals. We wanted to challenge ourselves. And I think maybe it's just good to give a little bit of context as to my role personally and sort of how we came into all of this, because the great news is that sustainability in this whole conversation isn't new to Timberland. It was back in 2007 that we launched the first Earthkeeper boot. It was actually the same time that I graduated from the Royal College of Art here in London. And it was a real inspiration. At the time, it was manufactured in the most responsible way possible. And for me, it was a real inspiration. And then when I think forward now a scary amount of years, and now being in the role that I'm in, it's really good now to be sort of looking back at that and then really considering what we can be doing as we move things forward. So those goals and being net positive by 2030, it's been a really cross-functional effort, and it's taken, of course, not just design, but we're then looking across the whole team. So it's about supply chain, it's about finance, it's about everyone really working together. And it's a great motivator. And yeah, I hope that sort of starts things off. And I'm sure maybe you have another question, but we come back.
Yeah, I mean, you said you've got started. That's really, fantastic to hear. This isn't a new thing. But how do you actually then take this forward and scale it?
Yeah, absolutely. So the real facets of this are around two areas. So we've got circularity, of course, being a key topic and of course something really important for today's conversation. But then for us, it's around regenerative leather as well. And so actually moving to a point that we're going to be net positive in the way that we're working. And of course, Timberland, we're very aware that we use every year a lot of leather, cotton, natural materials, etc. But if we can then actually really innovate in that process and we can really start to move that forwards, all of a sudden it really becomes that much more positive. So we really see this not only as an opportunity, but really importantly an obligation. We see that within Timberland, we want to be a pathfinder for the industry as a whole. And then ultimately, this is about cooperation. So this isn't us actually then protecting that supply chain. This is about broadening the conversation and working together. And it's so important, I think, that we then, we collaborate. And as I say, that side of things is really key. So really working cross industries as well. And it all comes back to make fashion circular and this whole push and why it's so important for us.
Brilliant. Chris, I'd love to ask you more questions around what the Timberlands of the future are going to look like, but I'm afraid that's all that we have time for. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. As both of our speakers have mentioned, and actually it's come up quite a few times across this last hour, it's a journey and there's still a lot to learn. Yet by jumping in and learning by doing, there's an opportunity to more quickly make these bold aspirations a reality. Joe, back to you.
Thank you very much, Laura. Yes, it's a journey. It's a journey for the industry. It's a journey for all of the organisations we've spoken to. It's been a journey for you all following this and us over the course of the past 2 days. And that's us done. I hope you have enjoyed the diverse collection of presentations and you've had a good nose through the featured videos. Everything will remain available online on the Summit 2020 webpage, so do please share on with colleagues who might be interested. You can actually also hack this a little bit and share the YouTube links with people in your network who do not have access to the platform. So what's next? We'll be running a network event in December, which will include some open to all headline content, so watch out for further comms around that. Otherwise, thanks to all our guests for taking time out of incredibly busy schedules, and thank you to you for tuning in. We will see you next year. That's Summit 2020, over and out.